You know, like I said before, I'm so excited about business. And I started reading Proverbs when I was 14 years old. I started reading Proverbs every day. You know, there's 31 chapters in the book of Proverbs. I always wanted to be wise. And of course, so every month, all through my teens, I get to Proverbs 31 and read about this Proverbs 31 woman, and I just wanted to be her. And so it's always been, my heart to do whatever I can, even before I was married, but especially as a married woman. I just think it's really neat to be able to subsidize income, just to be able to have a source of income in your home. And then, of course, as your children are born, that's exciting as well. So when you look at God's people, when you look at the Jewish nation, one reason why a lot of people hate the Jews is just because they're so filthy rich a lot of times. And but they are really wise in what they do, and I want to learn from them. And so that's actually my ambition as coming into this season in life that I'm in now. I just want to learn more about how the Jews do business. So that's not what I'm talking about. But I just think that when you have that mindset with children, to me, engaging kids in business ventures early in life is a natural way to train them in finances, to train them in responsibility, to train them in strong work ethics, dependability, communication skills, people skills, courage, honesty, and much more. Consider the importance of training in marketing a product or a service. This is what Annie talked about. All businesses basically come down to a market, a product or a service. And we can do both of those when we're training our children. There's many, many options for that. So because that's at the core of most businesses, why not think about what can we do to serve? How can we make money serving others? How can we make money? What can we sell? And that's a great attitude to have all the time when you're raising a family. So begin with brainstorming about how you can generate a profit whenever you have a need or a desire without the time or the funds to achieve what you need or desire. Okay, so that's like my grandfather used to say, need is the mother of invention. So whenever you need something and it's not there, start thinking, what can I do to create, to fill this void? And you mentioned that as well, Annie, because you gave a few stories of, okay, this gal who just made millions had a very negative shopping experience. So some of the things that I've done with my kids over the years came from those things where it's like, oh, this is a challenge. I need this and I don't have it, so what can I do? If I don't have it, maybe other people don't have it either, so what can I do to create this? So if you homeschool your kids, how many do homeschool your kids here? Okay, not too many. Some of you are thinking about it. You homeschool your kid.
It's not quite there yet, but we'd like to.
If you homeschool your kids, you can pursue income in the areas where they can support like if you start a business for yourself, you want to keep in mind that how can I incorporate my kids, whether they're homeschooled or not, but especially if they're homeschooled, what kind of business can you do that is homeschool friendly or that is user friendly for also getting your school done at the same time? And that's part of what I experienced as a homeschool mom. And so what areas are they interested in? How can we make money doing what our kids are interested in? Like, for example, my oldest daughter was so much into American Girl dolls for so long, and I started an American Girl Club at the local store, the local Christian bookstores, and it was a lot of fun, and I was always trying to figure out how can I make money with this, because all these girls are into American Girl back then, and I never came up with a way to make money for it, but I did help another homeschool girl launch her business making these doll clothes. And so, because she was making these doll clothes a lot cheaper for my daughter, and I was like, hey, Larissa, you can do this. And so, we did it. She was 12 years old, and so we networked. I got the name, I got the word out, and she got a lot of orders making doll clothes. So do what you can to earn money while you're having fun. And then, of course, I know homeschooling is different these days. When I homeschooled, there was no technology like we have now, so we didn't have the cyber schools. You know, you could do the Abeka and you could do the Bob Jones and you could follow the programs, or you could just do it the way you wanted to do it. So I just did it the way I wanted to do it. So I was always doing businesses and then figuring out, okay, how can I do the history, the math, the science of this business that we're creating right now. So I want to address the mentality when we're talking about kids and earning money. I want to address the mentality that our nation has, which I just think is so sad, and that is that kids can't work until they're 16 years old. And I just feel like we have this incredible, sad, sick nation of kids that are having these entitlement attitudes. And I guess, you know, for me, it's like, well, my mother was raised in a home where she was raised on a farm, and she was taught to work. And she never had a friend over, she never rode bikes, she never went swimming, she worked all day long, you know, from little on up, got up at 5 in the morning, milked cows, walked 2 miles to school, walked home, did her homework, went to bed. That was her life. When she was 15, her parents made her quit school, and they hired her out to clean for a doctor. So that's the woman who raised me. So she taught me how to work, but she didn't want me to experience what she did, so she also, you know, I did get to swim and ride a bike and graduate from high school and all those things, but she had this great work ethic, and work was fun. And, you know, I know people that say they've never worked a day in their life because they just enjoy what they do. And I think that's what I wanted for each of my kids, you know, and one of my kids is here tonight, Donnie, and so, you know, you can interject whatever you want. I asked them different, like I made a list of the things that we've done, and then I sent it to all my kids. I was like, what did I miss? And one of the responses I got from my older daughter, Destiny, she said, well, you got the right, she talked about this one business, which was, let's see, I have it listed here. I created, there was a need, and it really stretched her, and she didn't like it, so she had a negative comment, like, you made me do that, you know? And I said, what did you learn from that? And then, you know, we started talking about all the things that she learned from that. And courage was a big part, you know, where she had to actually go out and face strangers. And so it was really neat just being able to talk to her as an adult, as like, ooh, I didn't like that. That really stretched me. But here's how it really benefited me now that I am an adult. So what I really encourage people to do is think about making work fun for kids, and let's not come under this mentality that a kid can't earn money until they're 16. So, right, Vinyana? Vinyana's been working for me the last few years. I think she started when she was about 11. And so, you know, I've just been training her in different things, and now she's 14, and she can come into my house, and she knows where everything is, and she cleans it, and she knows exactly the way I want everything. And I did this with a neighbor girl not too long ago, and then when she was 15, she went out and got a job at Dutch Wonderland. So Vinyana's going to be able to work for anybody that wants to hire her, probably in the next year or so. And that's the kind of attitude I think we can have always with our kids, is like preparing them for the future, preparing them for life. Did you know in our nation, children can make up to $12,000 without having to pay taxes? Did you all know that? So that's a really big plus. So when you go into business with children, in my opinion, you don't really need to do everything that Annie encouraged us to do with the research, because you really don't need to report this up into 12,000. I mean, you can report it, but you don't have to pay taxes. So those are some things to keep in mind. And I think that when you're training children and they're earning money, you know, having these little envelopes is great. The 10% for giving, the 40% for savings, the 50% for spending, or however you want to set it up. We always have 3 different envelopes initially when they're real young children. So I have an article here, if any of you wanted. I always like to call the industries that I have with my children cottage industries. And this is an article that I wrote back in 1993. Okay, I didn't have a computer when I wrote this. I actually typed it up and submitted it to a homeschool magazine. And it was called Our Homeschool Cottage Industry. So this was the first business I started with my 7 and 6 year old. I'm sorry, 7 7-year-old and 6-year-old, Dustin and Donnie, and Dallas was 2 years old at the time. So I talk about, you know, how I incorporated this into my day, and basically what we did is we just got a motor route for delivering newspapers, and half of them were bundles that we took places, and half of them were, you know, we threw in driveways. So we used that as part of school because Dustin was our accountant, and he had to keep, you know, at 7 years old, he had to keep track of everything. So this article is, I didn't make copies, but if anybody wants a copy of this, I have a few copies here that you can take. And what was really neat about that story is we had an apartment complex, and a 6-year-old and a 7-year-old had to go up and down these steps to put newspapers. It took us about 5 hours each week, and they had to put newspapers at each step, at each door. And that was really hard for a 6 and a 7-year-old. Those little legs got hard, you know, they got tired. But the blessing of that is the gals, the women who ran that complex that had the office, they just thought these kids were so great. And so they would give them candy every week. And then, so that was so motivating. So, you know, and I just felt like that was a gift from the Father, because I would always pray that things would be special, you know, for the kids with the things that we were doing. And then after, when the summer came, the first summer came, they handed us a pool pass. They gave us a pass, a free pass for our family to go to the pool, which was right down the street from us. And I'm like, well, I can pay for it. No, your kids are awesome. You know, we just love them. You just come use our pool whenever you want. So when you have those kind of rewarding things and you're doing something with your kids and there's that reward, it's just very exciting. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about the different kinds of businesses to start with kids. You can start a business from a profit, pursue profit from a need or a desire, or profit from areas of interest, or profit from kids supporting parents, and then all kinds of others as well. Sorry, excuse me, I see. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to just review a few of the ideas, some of the things that we did. These are just ideas, and I'm happy to talk to anybody about any of these. Some of the women who are homeschool moms in our fellowship couldn't make it tonight, and one of them wanted to just get the homeschool families together, maybe to just brainstorm sometime. So we might do that in the future. I don't want to bore those of you who are not interested in this. In fact, I don't even have to go over this. Some of the businesses that we did, I can go over them, but if it doesn't apply to all of you and you want to go home, I don't even need to do that. I mean, I have them all listed.
Yeah, list them off.
They're all, you know, these are just, okay, so the profit from need or desire, the snacks and sodas at ball games. These are businesses that started, my boys were in T-ball and Little League, and I would be sitting there watching them play these games, and I would be thirsty and I would be hungry, and there's no snack bar, you know, or whatever they call it, vendor there selling anything. So I'd always forget to take, you know, the drinks, and we'd be sitting there, and I thought, my goodness, like all these kids, all these parents sit here and watch their little kids play these games, and there's never anything to eat or drink unless they remember to bring it. So that's the one where Destiny was saying that really stretched her, because I got a little red wagon, and Destiny had, you know, her snacks and sodas, and she was the cutest little thing, and she just went around to all the parents with this little red wagon and sold snacks and sodas. And, you know, we would buy these things in bulk at Sam's Club, and we had like 100% markup. I mean, they're hungry, they're thirsty, they're sitting in the hot sun watching their kid. And so we did that for years, and then, you know, I first started doing it at the ball game where my sons were playing, but then I got all the schedule for the whole community of all the ball games. And so every Saturday, that's when the games normally were. That's before we were before we were celebrating Sabbath on Saturday. But I would just, you know, we would spend the whole day going from game to game. And, you know, she was just, that's what Destiny was saying, like, you made me do that. But as it turned out, it really gave her, it pushed her out of her comfort zone. And that is a good quality for all of us to have. We all need to be pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone. And so if we can train our kids at young ages to do that, it can benefit them later on down the road as an adult. So that was the one little thing that started out of a need or desire. Overnight babysitting on New Year's Eve. How many people know, you want to go to a party and they don't want the children there on New Year's Eve. So we started several years of just offering babysitting services, and I'm telling you, we hit a niche of very wealthy people, and they paid very well to have us babysit their kids and keep them overnight. So we would just, a couple of our, I don't know which kids did it, but we would just have like a whole house full of kids. My kids were a little bit older. They'd plan all these little things for the little kids. We'd have a big sleepover, and they'd make a lot of money on New Year's Eve just because that was a niche. It was a need that a lot of people wanted a babysitter on New Year's Eve, and they were willing to pay for it. Another one that came out of a need or desire, and this is where we probably the one business where we made the most money, and this was we went on we had a big financial loss one time, and we wanted to go on vacation, so we decided that camping would be cheap. But I don't like tent camping, so we decided to borrow a pop-up camper we decided to rent a pop-up camper. And when I went to look at the prices of renting pop-up campers, I was just like, oh my gosh, I could rent a hotel for that. They were just very expensive. So we borrowed one from a friend, and that really launched a vision, like, wow, pop-up campers are expensive. What if we would get some pop-up campers and just allow like homeschool families or families that are on one income to use these pop-up campers? And so I did my research like Annie talked about. I researched for like 3 or 4 years, like all the ins and outs, all the liabilities, how much it would cost, because that's kind of we actually started a business. We called it Family Ventures. We opened a business. But after I did the research, I realized that was a really high risk, because we wanted to get jet skis and a whole bunch of other things. But those are adventure or they're just high risk when it comes to insurance. So after I did my research, even though we had the name, we went a whole different direction. We went just with the pop-up campers because they were not motorized, and bought a few of them, and we did everything on a donation basis instead of a fee. So therefore, it was all donation, and it wasn't technically a business. So we never did it under the business name. We did it just as a service, and this is just a donation. So then we had everybody sign a waiver. We had an attorney look over it to make sure that it was legit, and so that we were not liable, if there was any kind of. So there's ways to get around. There's lots of loopholes when it comes to business. You're nodding your head. I don't know if you're learning those loopholes. Are you learning this?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. So just being creative, but doing your research, like Annie said, that is just so important. And we had those pop-up campers for years. They did get, it was really hard. It was hard work to keep everything clean, and they were heavily used. But we did make that was a very profitable source of income that we had for many years. And we had a videotape that everybody had to watch of how to set it up, how to take it down. So we really put a lot of work into it. It was a lot of fun, but when we sold it, we were glad. I was really glad it was done. I mean, it was a lot of hard work for a long time. But it was a niche, and hundreds, we serviced hundreds of families just by advertising in Christian schools and homeschool community and word of mouth. And I mean, I still have a stack of all these people that used our pop-up campers. And it was a great way to network and get to know people and get to know other families and know that you're giving them an affordable vacation. Because they could use our pop-up camper for less than half of what they would have to go rent one. Or buy one, which is $10,000 or more. So it was a win-win. Profits from areas of interest. The two businesses that I could think of with that were baking. Our one son, Dallas, really liked to bake, and he did some baking for a while, especially over the holidays. He was selling his little cookies and pumpkin pies and pumpkin bread. And babysitting was another one. Our daughters both really wanted to babysit. I don't know if you did, Donnie, as much as Destiny really did. But you did have a flyer, I think, didn't you? I put them all through the Safe Sitter course, and one of my sons went through that too. I'm not sure if it was Dallas or Dustin, but one of my...
Pretty sure it wasn't Dallas.
I was thinking it was Dustin. So, but when a child is 11 years old, you can put them through a Safe Sitter course, and they can start babysitting and earning some money. Now, we didn't have that back in the day, but I started babysitting at age 11, not because I loved kids, but because I really loved earning money. And so it's, basically, if you put them through the Safe Sitter course, they can decide whether or not it's something they want to do. But making a nice little flyer and getting the word out, and referral marketing with babysitting services is great. Because if you, just if you have a flyer and you say, hey, Crystal, can you send this to all your friends, please? You know, so that they know about whoever it is, this girl, like Vinyana, Vinyana had her safe sitter course, so that's something she's thinking about, whether she wants to do that. Profits from kids supporting parents. So these are things like, when I had my own businesses, I was always thinking, how can I incorporate my kids into this business? The first time that I did that is I had a business where they were selling, this is before cell phones, where they were selling phone cards. And to be trained in how to use these cards, you had to listen to a cassette tape. Okay, this is way back, okay? But cassette tapes, not too many people had a tape recording device that could copy a cassette tape. Okay, there was these like machines. So we bought a machine where you could copy a cassette tape, and it was so boring. But Dustin and Destiny made money with that because they could sit there and push those buttons. So we started this little business called Double D Duplicating. And you know, with their spare time, I mean, give it a name. That makes it fun for the kids. You know, so they would, you know, we had these little flyers, and I got it out to all the people, and they would call and say, you know, I need this amount of tapes, and so they just press their little buttons and, you know, duplicate all these cassette tapes and sell them. And it was, you know, it didn't last long, but it was there for a season. It came out of a need. It's the way I incorporated them and gave them a source of income while I was making income with that business. And then one of the most fun businesses I did was Tupperware. When I became a mom, I decided I was going to be a Tupperware representative and I loved it. When Leona, I don't know if she's still here, she said she was in her element. I was so in my element. I remember the first Tupperware party I did. I got to be with women, and we played games, and we had fun. And I had just given birth to my first child, and I went home, and I was like, oh, this is me. Like, this is what I've been wanting to do all my life. Like, just have fun, playing games, making money while you're doing it. And so, as it turned out, I became very successful in that, and I qualified to become a manager. But I had 2 little kids in diapers, so I really didn't want to be a manager because that required full-time work. So I turned it down, and then I qualified again, and I turned it down. And finally, the 3rd time I qualified for being a manager, you get a free, you get a free car when you're a manager, and you have to run a team of training others. And I was like, God, man, I really need this car, but I didn't want to compromise the time with my children. And so I just went before the Father, and I talked to a couple people for wisdom and advice. And I came up with this idea of how to generate the same sales that managers generate with only going out 2 evenings a week and Tuesday mornings. So I would go Tuesday morning to my manager meeting, and I had an Amish girl come and clean the house and take care of the children for 5 hours, and I was going 5 hours on Tuesdays and then 2 evenings a week. And so I wasn't gone from the home that much, but I actually outbeat a lot of the other managers in sales who were going out every single day doing shows, just because of a creative idea that the Father gave me of how to streamline that. And He will do that. He will give us ideas when we stick to our priorities. And then I started selling my shows to other ladies who had a hard time getting shows. So I had that source of income. Like I'd book a lot of parties, and then I'd sell it to people on my team, and they'd pay me 25% of their sales because they had a hard time getting the shows, and I didn't. So it was just a fun win-win for everyone. And another thing we did where our kids supported us was new construction or renovating distressed properties. My husband was in construction, so we tried to get the kids on the job and helping out, learning construction skills. I know you Yoder girls have done that same thing with your father who's in construction. And it is nice to get those general skills. Nobody really took, I guess I would say our daughters probably enjoyed the construction more than our sons did. And I always told my husband that's because he actually taught our daughters. He didn't teach our sons. He just expected them to know what to do. But with the girls, he was a little bit more patient and taught them. And so, Donnie just helped build a tiny house, and Destiny's working a lot with distressed properties and with her husband in investment properties, and it's been great. So, is my time up? Oh, I didn't see you do the little, did you do the little thing? Okay. All right, well, I can stop. I have, there's a bunch of others that I have listed here. Back in 2008, I just started an LLC for myself to kind of incorporate everything that I want to do. So my name, Bert, means bright, so the name of my LLC is Bright Ventures, and I made it generic so that everything I want to do, all the businesses I want to do, I can do under that LLC, and it's just an easy, like, I wanted to flip properties, which is real estate. You know, I wanted to be able to say to my friends, hey, you know, I have all this administrative work because I've worked in administration for years, so if you need me and you want to hire me, you know, I can bill you through my LLC. You don't have to put me on your payroll. So that's what I've been doing the last couple years. Like, I just worked for a chiropractor in New Holland for the last 3.5 years, but I was not her employee. Her patients didn't know that, but I was not her employee. I just billed her through my LLC. And when you have some kind of a umbrella like that, there's just a lot of, you can be very creative in pretty much any kind of business as long as the name is vague enough that everything can fall in, you know, everything can fall under Bright Ventures, right? I mean, that's not a specific business, like what, you know, some of the names would be a little bit more specific. And as far as the Airbnb, I don't think I will ever do that. I actually used this basement a lot years before Airbnb came around, and so I have my own little niche of how to get the guests that are really good fits for our family. But you know, we have the outside entrance and the bedroom and bathroom and the living area here, and it is a lot of fun. I really enjoy it, and now that the kids are gone, we have some, you know, sometimes the rooms upstairs I make available for professional women who are in transition, and so it's been a lot of fun. So, okay, any questions? Sorry if I went over time. I didn't.
Sometime can you explain LLC and all that entails, or is that too much?
There's books over here that explain it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, I mean, there's like S corporations and C corporations and sole proprietors and LLCs. Did I miss any of them?
Did you say corporations?
I said S
Okay,
corporation
yeah.
and C corporation.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So there's like pretty much just four. Those four,
Yeah.
right? The sole proprietor, and there's pros and cons for both in how you set up your, whether it's a corporation or it's limited liability corporation is what an LLC is.
Alright.
To me, I just felt like it was the best for me. Sole proprietors, at least back in the day, you had to have your own name in there with the,
Yeah, you can get around it with like a DBA, like a doing business.
Oh, yeah,
as.
right.
But an LLC protects you more. If someone sues you, they're suing the business, not you.
Okay.
If you're registered as a
Alright.
sole proprietor and you have legal issues, it comes out of your personal account. Your house is at risk, your
Okay.
personal stuff.
That makes more sense. Okay.
right. And now, so my husband has a C corporation. So when we started the co-op, the camper co-op, we actually did a DBA, and that stands for doing business as. You know, we called it Family Adventures, but it was under the covering of his C corporation. Even though we never did any business in that, you can establish DBAs within. Whereas an LLC, you can't establish a DBA with an LLC. I don't think. I'm pretty sure. I think it has to
You
be.
could, but I don't know.
Maybe you can. Yeah, I'm not up on it. I mean, I looked it up. I did the research back in 2008, and now I've just been kind of using it ever since. Annie's more up on these things than I am. That's
And I have a bad memory, so go to the books.
Any other questions? Okay.
Does anyone have any other questions for any of the ladies who shared, or if you have something that you want to share, a thought that was triggered from your own experience that overlaps with one of the subjects?
Do you have this bra on?
No, I do not.
They are beautiful. I've seen them. They are beautiful. She did such a good job with them.
I did that the day before New Year's. I barely made my 2018 goal.
They're very pretty.
Thank you.
I looked up her Etsy account.
I was so confused.
If you want linen brawls,
Yes.
Carrie is the
100%
person to
linen.
see. They're beautiful and they're good for you.
You have to put it in the painted trunk with no spaces. If you put spaces, you get literally painted big luggage.
So, combined question to everybody to share it, I guess. So, I know Leona had said about fear being one of the things that stops you. Is there anything else that you would say would have been your hardest kind of preventing you from stepping out into your businesses, or does that question make sense?
I would say kind of what I mentioned, when I did the research about the family ventures and all the things, I just felt like it was too risky
Okay.
with, owning jet skis and boats and all those kinds of things that are motorized and, the insurance was just outrageous.
So balancing that risk versus the
Right.
good, I guess, or
Right,
profit.
just simplifying it.
Okay.
So I think what Annie said is great, like just researching, doing your research before you, I think if you do your research, really do your research, think about all the worst case scenarios
Okay.
and how this could possibly backfire on you and what you're gonna do if it does backfire on you.
Okay.
Always have your plan B,
So having that
Right.
business plan.
always have your plan
Yeah,
B.
but at the same time, like you're your biggest limitation. So with like
Yeah.
starting a business, like you're the problem because you're not doing it, but you're also the solution. So yeah, there's like two sides to it.
Okay.
I'd say to go hand in hand with fear is also rejection, because it does happen,
Okay.
even if like you were afraid that it would happen, and sometimes it does happen even though you went past your fear, and so that can be discouraging. But
That doesn't define your value just
Exactly.
because someone didn't have what you
and
had.
to really get over that and to keep doing it even though
Okay.
like because not everyone's your target audience.
Okay.